The training mat stretched 15 feet across, regulation navy blue, worn smooth by 1,000 boots in 1,000 falls. 282 Navy SEALs stood in a loose circle around its edges, arms crossed, eyes skeptical. The morning sun cut through the California haze, turning the Pacific coastline into a blade of light against the concrete and steel of Naval Special Warfare Command. In the center of that circle, two men lay broken. Their screams had died to moans, their legs bent at angles God never intended. Blood pooled dark beneath them, mixing with sweat in the salt air blowing in from the ocean. And standing between them, breathing steady despite the blood on her lips and the fire in her ribs, was a woman they'd written off before she ever stepped onto that mat. Petty Officer First Class Sarah Mitchell, 28 years old, 5'6", 135 pounds soaking wet, combat medic, Marine Recon, and the most dangerous person in that circle, though only a handful had known it before those 7 seconds changed everything. Her right hand hung loose at her side, her left pressed against her ribs where the kick had landed, but her eyes stayed level, calm, the kind of calm that comes from places most people never see and pray they never have to. Someone in the crowd whispered a prayer. Someone else turned away. A third man vomited quietly into his hands, unable to process what he just witnessed. Chief Instructor Raymond Hayes stood frozen at the edge of the mat, his whistle still raised to his lips, though he'd never gotten the chance to blow it. The whole thing had happened too fast. 7 seconds from attack to aftermath. 7 seconds that would rewrite careers and change protocols and prove what some men refuse to believe. That skill doesn't care about size. That training beats arrogance. That underestimating the quiet ones is the last mistake you ever make. Sarah's voice cut through the silence, professional and detached, the voice of someone who'd seen worse and kept working. Corpsman to the mat. Captain Stone has a complete ACL rupture with probable patellar fracture. Lieutenant Grant has a spiral fibula fracture with ankle dislocation and vascular compromise. 6-minute window before permanent damage. She didn't ask. She didn't explain. She simply stated facts, then dropped to one knee beside the nearest broken man and started checking his pulse. Because that's what medics do, even when the men bleeding at their feet had just tried to end their career. Even when 282 witnesses watched in stunned silence. Even when every instinct screamed to walk away and let them suffer. You save the life in front of you. Always. No exceptions. But the real story, the one that mattered, the one that explained how a combat medic broke 2 Navy SEALs in 7 seconds flat without breaking a sweat, that story started 6 months earlier, in a place where the rules were different and the stakes were higher, and Sarah Mitchell first learned what it meant to be underestimated by men who should have known better. It started in hell, a little slice of Afghanistan called Wardak Province, where the Taliban still owned the night and American blood still stained the rocks and forward operating bases clung to the mountains like desperate prayers. It started with fire. The explosion lifted Sergeant Marcus Webb 3 feet off the ground and slammed him back down like the fist of an angry god. The IED had been buried shallow, command detonated, perfectly timed to catch the patrol as it rounded the narrow pass. The kind of ambush the Taliban had perfected over 20 years of killing Americans who thought they understood this war. Webb went down hard. The 2 Marines behind him went down harder, and the rocks above them came alive with muzzle flashes and the crack of AK-47 rounds punching through the thin mountain air. Sarah Mitchell felt the blast wave before she heard it, a wall of pressure that knocked her sideways into the rocks. Her medical pack slammed into her spine, her rifle clattered against stone, and her training kicked in before her conscious mind caught up, dropping her flat, scanning for threats, counting bodies. 3 down. Webb wasn't moving. The Marines behind him were screaming. The rest of the patrol was returning fire, but the Taliban had the high ground and the numbers, and the kind of religious certainty that made them fearless. 200 meters, maybe less. the distance closing with every burst of automatic fire. Sarah didn't think. She moved, low crawl, pack dragging, rounds sparking off rocks 6 inches from her head. She reached Webb in 15 seconds that felt like 15 hours. Blood everywhere. Too much blood. The kind of blood that meant arterial damage in a 90-second countdown to death. His femoral artery had been shredded by shrapnel. The blood pumped with his heartbeat, bright red, arterial, fatal. In a hospital with a surgical team, he might have had a chance. Out here, in this hellhole, with Taliban closing in and no evac in sight, he was already dead. The math was simple and absolute. Sarah didn't accept the math. Her hands moved with practiced precision, even as rounds cracked overhead and voices screamed for her to get down. Tourniquet first, high and tight on the thigh, ratchet it down until the blood flow stopped. Check pulse. Still there. Thready, but there. Not enough. The shrapnel had torn deep. Internal bleeding. Massive. Unstoppable without surgery. She needed to see the wound, needed to control the source. But her surgical kit was gone, blown 20 feet away by the blast, scattered across rocks she couldn't reach without exposing herself to direct fire. Webb's eyes found hers, glazed, fading. He knew. They both knew. "Stay with me, Sergeant." Her voice was steady. Command, not request. "You don't get to quit on me." She needed tools. She had none. She needed time. She had none. She needed a miracle. She made one instead. Her K-bar knife cleared its sheath in one smooth motion. 7 inches of carbon steel, the same knife Marines had carried since World War II. Not a surgical instrument, not even close, but sharp enough and steady enough in the right hands. Taliban rounds walked closer. The suppressing fire from her patrol was faltering. Someone was yelling for her to fall back. She ignored them all. The blade cut through Webb's pant leg, through skin, through muscle, following the path of the shrapnel by feel and instinct, and the kind of anatomical knowledge that comes from 1,000 hours of training and the desperate need to save the life in front of you. Blood welled up. She wiped it away with her sleeve, cut deeper, found the arterial tear, and then, working with fingers made steady by sheer force of will, she began to clamp and tie and pray that battlefield surgery performed with a combat knife and paracord would be enough to keep a good man breathing until the Black Hawk arrived. If it arrived. The Taliban were 100 meters out now, close enough to hear their voices, close enough to see their shadows moving through the rocks, close enough that Sarah knew with cold certainty that she'd bought Webb maybe 5 more minutes of life and cost herself the same. She didn't care. The mission was clear. Keep him alive. Everything else was secondary. Her hands worked. Blood soaked through her gloves. Rounds sparked closer. Someone was screaming her name, begging her to move. And still she worked, because quitting wasn't in her vocabulary and never had been. The voice screaming belonged to Corporal Danny Rodriguez, the youngest member of the patrol. 20 years old. First deployment, he'd looked up to Sarah since they'd arrived in country, watched her work with a kind of reverence usually reserved for chaplains or saints. "Mitchell, for Christ's sake, pull back, they're coming!" She didn't look up, couldn't look up. Webb's pulse was stabilizing, but barely. The makeshift clamp was holding, but just. One wrong move and he'd bleed out in seconds. "Cover me, Rodriguez. I need 2 more minutes." "We don't have 2 minutes." "Then make them." The kid did. Emptied his magazine into the rocks above. Reloaded. Emptied another. Bought her the seconds she needed while rounds chewed up the ground around him. 90 seconds became 2 minutes. 2 became 3. Webb's pulse steadied. The bleeding slowed. And somewhere in the distance, the sound she'd been praying for cut through the gunfire like the voice of salvation itself. Rotor blades, heavy and deep. The Black Hawk coming in hot, pilot risking everything to pull them out of this killing zone. The Black Hawk's door gunner opened up with the minigun, watched the mountains drop away beneath them, as the pilot banked hard and ran for the safety of the forward operating base. 3 surgeries and 4 months of rehab, but he lived. The after-action report called it a miracle. The battalion surgeon called it the finest piece of field medicine he'd seen in 20 years of war. The patrol called it the day Mitchell went from good medic to legend. The brigade commander called it something else when he pinned the Bronze Star with Valor to Sarah's blood-stained uniform 2 weeks later. He called it proof. But not everyone was convinced. Not everyone wanted to be, because Sarah Mitchell had done something that complicated the narrative. She'd saved a life under fire in a way that required both medical skill and combat courage. She'd proven that the designation non-combatant was a bureaucratic fiction when the bullets started flying. She'd proven that women could do the job, and some men would never forgive her for it. The ceremony took place at Forward Operating Base Shkin, dusty parade ground, American flags snapping in the wind, 150 Marines in formation, the commander's voice echoing across the compound as he read the citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States while serving with Marine Recon, Wardak Province, Afghanistan. Petty Officer Mitchell's actions were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. The medal felt heavy against her chest, heavier than it should, because 3 Marines had gone home in body bags from that same patrol. Because the Taliban who'd planned the ambush were still out there. Because medals didn't bring back the dead or erase the memories of those who'd watched friends die. After the ceremony, Webb found her, still on crutches, still pale from blood loss, but alive and determined to walk again. "They tell me I should be dead," he said. "You're not. Because of you." He extended his hand. "Thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you." Sarah shook his hand. "Thank Rodriguez. He bought me the time." "I did, and he said the same thing. Thank Mitchell." Webb's grip was strong despite his condition. "I've got a wife, 2 daughters, 4 and 6 years old. They've got their dad because you wouldn't quit. That's everything, Mitchell. Everything." His voice broke on the last word. Sarah felt her throat tighten, nodded once, couldn't trust herself to speak. "Whatever you do next," Webb continued, "whatever they ask of you, remember this. You're the best damn medic I've ever served with, and I've served with the best." He left. Sarah stood alone on the parade ground, dust swirling around her boots, metal heavy against her chest, and wondered what came next. The answer arrived 4 months later. 4 months after Wardak, Sarah Mitchell received orders. Not a request, not an invitation. Orders. Direct from Special Operations Command, classified, immediate transfer required. Naval Special Warfare Command, Coronado, California. Report to the Training Development Division. Purpose: develop and demonstrate combat medic retention protocols for SEAL operations. She read the orders 3 times, looking for the hidden meaning. Found it in what wasn't written. They didn't want her expertise. They wanted her failure. A test case. Proof that even the best female medic couldn't hack it with the SEALs. She packed her gear anyway, because orders were orders, and because part of her wanted to see their faces when she proved them wrong. The flight from Kabul to San Diego took 26 hours with layovers. She spent most of it sleeping, the kind of exhausted sleep that comes after months of living on adrenaline and bad coffee and the constant background hum of potential violence. She dreamed of Webb, of the blood and the rocks and the sound of rotor blades promising salvation. She dreamed of Rodriguez too, the kid who'd stood his ground and given her the seconds she needed. Last she'd heard, he'd made sergeant, was training new Marines, probably telling them the story of the crazy medic who'd performed battlefield surgery under fire. She woke up over Nevada and looked down at the desert scrolling past beneath them, so different from Afghanistan and yet somehow the same. Harsh, unforgiving, beautiful in its cruelty. 20 minutes after landing, she was in a rental car heading south on the I-5, watching the Pacific appear on her left like a promise. The ocean, vast and blue and eternal, so different from the mountains of Afghanistan, so far from the dust and blood and endless wars that never seemed to resolve anything. The base looked like every military installation she'd ever seen, chain link and concrete and buildings that had seen better decades. But there was something else here too. A weight, a history. This was where SEALs were made, where the best of the best came to prove they belonged. She showed her orders at the gate. The guards studied her ID longer than necessary, eyes flicking from the photo to her face and back again. Finally waved her through without comment. The base operations building was 3 stories of sun-faded paint and narrow windows. She found the training development office on the 2nd floor, knocked once, and entered when a voice called out. Commander James Harwood looked up from his paperwork. 52 years old, gray at the temples, eyes that had seen too much and never forgot any of it. Gulf War SEAL, 3 combat deployments, the kind of officer who'd earned his rank in the places that didn't make the news. Petty Officer Mitchell, welcome to Coronado. He didn't stand, didn't offer his hand, just gestured to the chair across from his desk. I assume you've read your orders. Yes, sir. And I assume you understand what they really mean. Sarah met his eyes. I understand some people want me to fail, sir. Some people. Harwood's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. That's diplomatic. The truth is, half the brass thinks this whole integration thing is political theater. The other half thinks it's necessary evolution. Me? I think it's above my pay grade. He pulled a file from his desk. But I read your jacket. Wardak Province. The femoral artery repair under fire. Impressive work. I was doing my job, sir. Your job was to provide medical support. You performed battlefield surgery with a K-bar knife while taking fire from hostiles 100 meters out. That's not doing your job, Mitchell. That's rewriting what the job means. He opened the file. You'll be demonstrating combat medic defense protocols, how to engage when surrounded while treating casualties. The SEALs need to see it, command needs to document it, and depending on how it goes, it either opens doors or closes them for every woman who comes after you. No pressure then, sir. None at all. This time he did smile, brief and hard. You'll work with Master Sergeant Raymond Cole. He's our senior hand-to-hand combat instructor, Vietnam-era medic himself before he crossed over to the teams. If anyone can prepare you for what you're walking into, it's him. When do I start? You started the moment you walked through that gate. Harwood closed the file. Dismissed. Sarah stood, saluted, and turned to leave. His voice stopped her at the door. Mitchell, one more thing. The men you'll be demonstrating for, most of them are good operators, professional, fair. But there's always a few who think the only way to stay on top is to keep others down. You know the type. Yes, sir, I've met them before. I'm sure you have. Just remember out here you're on their turf, their rules, their audience. He paused. So don't give them any excuse to break you. Sarah nodded once and left, her boots echoing down the hallway, wondering what kind of man this Master Sergeant Cole was, and whether he'd be another obstacle or something else entirely. She found out the next morning. The armory smelled like gun oil and old sweat, and the particular metallic tang of weapons that had seen real use. Sarah was checking the serial number on her assigned M4 when a voice spoke behind her. You're the one who saved Webb and Wardak. She turned. The man standing there looked like he'd been carved from old leather and cigarette smoke. 58 years old, maybe 60. Gray beard cut military short, shoulders still broad despite the years. Eyes pale blue and sharp as broken glass. He wore the same desert camouflage utilities as everyone else, but his moved differently. Older, stiffer. The walk of a man whose body had taken more damage than it was designed to endure, and kept working anyway. A scar ran from his left ear to his jaw. Shrapnel, probably. Old wound. The kind that never quite healed right. His left leg carried more weight than his right. Another souvenir from another war. Master Sergeant Cole? Sarah guessed. Gunner. Everyone calls me Gunner. He moved closer, studying her with the kind of attention usually reserved for equipment inspections. Hell of a job you did out there. Femoral repair with a K-bar. Webb says you saved his life. The Black Hawk saved his life. I just kept him alive until it got there. That's one way to look at it. Gunner leaned against the weapon rack, taking weight off his left leg. Other way is you did something most combat surgeons couldn't pull off with a full operating theater. Out in the rocks, under fire, with Taliban breathing down your neck. Sarah said nothing. Compliments made her uncomfortable. Always had. Her father had been the same way. Decorated Marine officer who deflected praise with the same short nods and uncomfortable silences. You know why they brought you here? Gunner asked. To demonstrate medic defense protocols. That's what they tell people. Want to know the truth? He didn't wait for an answer. Command wants to prove integration doesn't work. They need a test case. Someone who looks good on paper but fails in front of witnesses. Then they can close the door and say they tried. Commander Harwood told me something similar. Harwood's a good man, fair, but he's got bosses and they've got agendas. Gunner pushed off the rack, limped 2 steps closer. I'm not one of them. Why should I believe that? Because I watched you on the video feed. The security cameras at Wardak FOB caught the whole thing. The explosion, the fire, you haul in Webb while rounds sparked off the rocks. His voice went quiet. I've seen that before. Long time ago. Different war. Same courage. Vietnam? Khe Sanh, 1968. I was a medic then, 20 years old and dumb as a box of rocks. My squad got hit during a patrol. Ambush. NVA had us pinned. Our medic went down first. Deliberate targeting. So I grabbed his bag and did what I could. He looked away, jaw working. Wasn't enough. Lost 3 men because I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't have the training. Didn't have the guts to work under fire. Sarah studied him, understanding dawning. The scar, the limp, the weight he carried in his eyes that had nothing to do with age. That's why you became an instructor. That's why I've spent 40 years making sure no medic ever freezes the way I did. Gunner met her eyes again. You didn't freeze. Under worse circumstances than I faced. With better results than I managed. So here's the deal. I'm going to train you. Not for them. Not for their politics or their test cases. For the next Webb who needs someone like you. Train me in what? How to fight. How to win. How to walk into a room full of men who don't think you belong and make them believers. He started toward the door. Meet me in Gym 3 at 0530 tomorrow. Wear your PT gear and leave your ego at home, because I'm going to break you down and build you back up, and it's going to hurt like hell. Why would you do this for me? Gunner stopped in the doorway. When he looked back, his face showed 40 years of regret, carried like weight on tired shoulders. Because I couldn't do it for my team. Because I've been teaching other people to be brave for 4 decades, while I remember being a coward. Because maybe training you right helps balance the scales. His voice roughened. And because Webb's wife sent me a letter. Told me her husband's alive because someone finally had the guts to do the job I failed at. So yeah, I'm doing this for you, but I'm doing it for them too. He left. Sarah stood alone in the armory, the smell of gun oil and old wars surrounding her, and understood she just met something rare in the military. A man who let his failures make him better instead of bitter. She showed up at Gym 3 at 0530 the next morning. Gunner was already there, the space already set up. Mats on the floor, training pads on the walls. The air smelled like rubber and determination. 3 weeks, that's what they had. 3 weeks before the demonstration in front of 282 SEALs who'd already decided she couldn't hack it. 3 weeks to learn what most operators spent years perfecting. Gunner didn't waste time on speeches. Everything you know about fighting is wrong, he said. You've been taught to fight like you're the same size as your opponent. You're not. Never will be. So we're going to teach you to fight like physics matters more than muscle. Like leverage beats strength. Like a small person with the right training can drop a big person who thinks size is all that matters. He demonstrated simple moves, brutal in their efficiency, not about overpowering, about redirecting, using momentum, turning strength into weakness. This isn't sport fighting, he continued, not MMA, not boxing. This is survival. When you're treating a casualty and someone grabs you from behind, you don't have time for a fair fight. You disable them and get back to work. Fast, clean, no wasted motion. He showed her a wrist lock, how to trap the grabbing hand, how to rotate your body so their strength worked against them, how to apply pressure to the joint until they had no choice but to go down or have their arm broken. The key is commitment, Gunnar said. Half measures get you killed. When you apply the technique, you commit fully. You decide they're going down, and they go down. Period. Sarah tried it, got it wrong. The training partner stayed standing. Gunnar corrected her positioning. You're thinking too much, analyzing. Combat doesn't give you time to think. You react. The thinking happens in training. The doing happens under fire. Again. She tried again. Better this time. The partner went down. Controlled, but effective. Good. 999 more times and it'll be automatic. Pain is data, he told her on day 3, after she'd taken a throw wrong and landed hard enough to see stars. Your body's trying to tell you something. Listen to it. Use it. Don't fight through pain. Fight because of it. She didn't understand at first. Thought he meant push through the pain. Ignore it. But that wasn't it at all. When you get hurt, your body releases adrenaline, sharpens your focus, makes you faster, stronger. Most people panic when they feel pain. You're going to use it as fuel, as information. Pain means something's wrong, so you fix it, you adjust, you don't quit, you adapt. Day 7, he introduced weapons, not firearms, improvised tools, medical shears, pens, keys, anything that could become an advantage in the half-second window when surprise mattered more than strength. A pen to the eye socket will stop any attacker. Medical shears can cut through muscle like butter. A key jabbed into the throat will give you 3 seconds to escape. You're not looking to kill. You're looking to disable. Create distance. Get back to your patient. Day 12, he brought in other instructors. Full contact sparring. Sarah took hits. Real hits. Her jaw got clipped. Her ribs got bruised. She gave them back. Started to understand how to read body language. How to see the attack before it came. How to position herself so size became irrelevant. The other instructors were professional, respectful. They didn't pull punches, but they didn't try to hurt her either. Just pushed her to see what she could do under pressure. One of them, a SEAL named Dave Martinez, pulled Gunnar aside after a session. She's good, Martinez said. Really good. Where'd she learn to fight like that? She didn't, Gunnar replied. That's all from the last 2 weeks. Raw talent plus motivation. 2 weeks? You're kidding. Not even a little. She's got something most operators take years to develop. She's not afraid to get hurt. Doesn't freeze when she takes a hit. Just adjusts and keeps coming. Martinez watched Sarah work through a sequence with another partner. She's going to surprise some people. That's the plan. Day 18, something clicked. She stopped thinking, started moving. The techniques became instinct, muscle memory, the kind of automatic response that happens when training overwrites hesitation. Gunnar watched her drop a 200-pound SEAL instructor with a wrist lock and hip throw that looked effortless. Nodded once. You're ready, he said. For what? For whatever they throw at you. He pulled something from his pocket, 2 metal tags on a chain, dog tags, old ones, stamped with his name and service number from Vietnam. These kept me alive in hell. Your turn to carry them. Sarah took them, feeling the weight of history and expectation and trust. The metal was worn smooth in places, scratched, dented. They'd seen things, survived things. Don't let them see you break, Gunner said, but don't let them break you either. There's a difference, one they need to learn. The demonstration was scheduled for 0800 the following Friday. Sarah spent the week before it running scenarios in her head, practicing the techniques until her body moved without conscious thought, memorizing the layout of the training compound, preparing for every variable she could imagine. She didn't prepare for Derek Stone. Nobody could have prepared for Derek Stone. Captain Derek Stone was 6'3" and 230 pounds of coiled aggression, wrapped in desert camouflage and covered in tattoos that told the story of a life lived violently. Silver Star from Fallujah. Multiple deployments. The kind of SEAL who believed the old ways were the only ways, and any change was betrayal. His tattoos covered both arms and sleeve work. The SEAL Trident on his right shoulder, unit insignias, battle dates, names of fallen brothers. A skull with crossed rifles on his left forearm. The kind of ink that said this man had seen combat and wanted everyone to know it. He'd been golden once, the operator everyone wanted on their team. Fast, strong, fearless. But that was 5 years ago. These days, younger SEALs were outrunning him, outscoring him, making him feel like what he'd sworn he'd never become, obsolete. His father had been a SEAL. His grandfather had been a Marine raider in World War II. Military service ran in his blood like a genetic imperative. And now, watching younger operators surpass him, watching women try to enter the teams, he felt like everything his family had built was being dismantled piece by piece. Sarah first saw him in the chow hall, 3 days before the demonstration. He sat with a group of younger operators, holding court, voice loud enough to carry across the room. Heard they're bringing in a female medic to teach us combat techniques, he was saying. What's next? Yoga? Maybe some aromatherapy to help us deal with our feelings? Laughter from his table, not from others. The older SEALs kept eating, eyes down, not engaging. But Derek's audience, the younger ones desperate for his approval, laughed right on cue. Tyler Grant laughed the loudest, 25 years old, fresh from BUD/S, hero worship in his eyes every time he looked at Derek. His own father had been killed in Mogadishu during the Black Hawk Down incident. Tyler had grown up with that shadow, that legacy, that impossible standard to live up to. Sarah got her food and found a seat across the room. Didn't react, didn't engage, let it roll off like water. But Gunner noticed. He always noticed. Sat down across from her, tray loaded with food he'd barely touch. That's Stone, he said quietly, decorated, dangerous, and scared out of his mind that the world's changing and he's not changing with it. I've met the type before. I'm sure you have, but here's what you need to know. Stone's not just an asshole. He's a wounded animal, and wounded animals are unpredictable. Gunner pushed rice around his plate. Watch yourself around him. He's the kind who'll smile while he puts the knife in. You think he'll try something? I know he will. Question is, when and how? Gunner's eyes tracked Derek across the chow hall. Man like that, he can't help himself. He sees you as everything wrong with the modern military. You succeed, it proves his worldview is outdated. He can't allow that. So what do? Be ready. Trust your training. And remember, you don't have to prove anything to him. You just have to do the job. The next encounter came 2 days later. Sarah was running through final prep in the training compound, working through defensive scenarios with one of the junior instructors. Professional, focused, doing her job. Derek walked past with his shadow, Tyler Grant, close behind, fresh from BUD/S, eager, desperate to prove himself to the men he idolized. Looking good, Doc, Derek called out. Very graceful, like a ballerina. Tyler laughed, loud and performative. Sarah ignored them, finished her sequence, reset. Derek stopped walking, turned. I'm talking to you. I heard you, Captain, I'm working. Working, right. He moved closer, into her space, using his size like a weapon. You really think you can teach SEALs how to fight? You? Sarah met his eyes, kept her voice level. I think I can teach combat medics how to defend themselves while treating casualties. That's what I'm here for. Yeah, that's what they tell us. But we both know the truth, don't we? Derek's smile was all teeth and no warmth. This is about politics, about proving something that can't be proven. And when you fail, they'll blame you instead of the stupid idea that put you here. If I fail, it'll be my responsibility, nobody else's. Confidence, I like that. Derek leaned in closer, voice dropping. But confidence doesn't stop bullets, doesn't win fights, doesn't change reality. And the reality is, you don't belong here. You're a liability waiting to happen. Gunner's voice cut across the compound like a whip crack. Stone, you got something to say? Say it to me. Derek straightened, stepped back. The smile never left his face. Just making conversation, Master Sergeant, getting to know our instructor. Get to know her on your own time. Right now you're disrupting training. Understood. Derek nodded to Tyler, started to walk away, stopped, looked back at Sarah. Good luck Friday, you're going to need it. They left. Sarah released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Gunner joined her on the mat. He's going to try something. I know. I mean it. Stone's not the type to let this go. He sees you as a threat to everything he thinks he is. Men like that, they don't just compete, they eliminate. What do you want me to do, back out? Hell no. I want you to be ready. Gunner's expression was grave, because when he comes at you, and he will, it won't be according to the rules. It'll be designed to hurt, to humiliate, to prove his point in front of everyone who matters. Then I'll defend myself. You'll do more than that. Gunner pulled out his dog tags, the ones he'd carried through Vietnam, and placed them in her hand. You'll show them what happens when training meets arrogance, when discipline faces ego, when someone finally stands up and says enough. Sarah closed her fingers around the medal, still warm from his pocket, heavy with history. I won't let you down, she said. I know, but this isn't about me. It's about every medic who ever had to fight while trying to save a life. It's about Webb and the next Webb, and the one after that. It's about proving the mission matters more than the politics. His voice roughened. And it's about showing Derek Stone that the world's already changed, whether he likes it or not. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk in the barracks, staring at the ceiling, Gunner's dog tags resting on her chest. The metal was cool now, solid, real. She thought about her father, Staff Sergeant Michael Mitchell, killed in Iraq in 2007 when she was 19. He'd written her a letter before he died. She kept it folded in her locker, read it so many times she'd memorized every word. Baby girl, it said, if you're reading this, I'm gone, but I need you to know something. The world is going to try to break you. It'll tell you you're not strong enough, smart enough, good enough. Don't believe it. You're a Mitchell. We don't break. We stand. We fight. We protect the people who can't protect themselves. And we never, ever back down from doing what's right, even when it costs us everything. I love you. Make me proud. Dad. She'd carried those words through 3 deployments, through Wardak, through every moment when quitting seemed easier than continuing. Tomorrow, she'd carry them into that circle. With Gunner's tags around her neck and her father's words in her heart. And whatever happened, she wouldn't break. Friday came too fast and not fast enough. Sarah woke at 04:30, ran 6 miles, ate breakfast alone, put on her uniform with the same care she'd shown before going outside the wire in Afghanistan, slipped Gunner's dog tags over her head, felt them settle against her chest, hidden beneath her shirt. At 07:45, she walked to the training compound. The morning sun was already hot. The Pacific wind carried salt and promise. Somewhere in the distance, recruits were running cadence. The normal sounds of a military base preparing for another day. But today wasn't normal. Today was judgment, test, proof. One way or the other, everything changed after this morning. 282 Navy SEALs were already assembled when she arrived. They formed a loose ring around the training mat, arms crossed, faces skeptical. Some she recognized from the chow hall, others were strangers. All of them watching, evaluating, most of them already decided. Commander Harwood stood at one edge, clipboard in hand, expression neutral. Jake Mendez, one of the senior corpsmen, caught her eye and nodded. Small gesture, but it meant something. Gunner stood at the opposite edge. He didn't nod, didn't smile, just looked at her with those pale blue eyes that had seen Khe Sanh and survived and spent 40 years trying to atone. And near the front of the crowd, arms crossed and smile sharp, stood Derek Stone, Tyler Grant beside him. Both of them radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never having been proven wrong. Sarah stepped onto the mat. The rubber was warm beneath her boots. The silence was complete. 282 men waiting to see her fail. Commander Harwood cleared his throat. Petty Officer Mitchell will demonstrate combat medic retention protocols, specifically defensive engagement techniques when treating casualties under direct threat. These are real-world scenarios based on actual combat situations. All engagement will be controlled and supervised. Questions? Silence. Proceed. Sarah took a breath, let it out slow, found her center, felt the weight of Gunner's dog tags against her chest, remembered Webb's blood on her hands and Taliban rounds sparking off rocks and the sound of the Black Hawk coming to save them. Remembered that she'd survived worse than this, done harder things than this, proven herself in places where the stakes were life and death instead of careers and egos. This was just another mission, another day at work, another chance to show what she was made of. She began with simple demonstrations: escape from a rear grab, defense against a knife attack, techniques that looked easy but required perfect timing and positioning. The first volunteer was professional, careful. They moved through the sequence without incident. Polite applause from some of the crowd, skeptical silence from others. Second demonstration, more complex. Multiple attackers taking turns. Sarah flowed through the defenses like water, redirecting momentum, using leverage, making it look effortless. More applause. Some of the skepticism fading. Even Derek had stopped smiling. Third demonstration, a larger SEAL, 240 at least, real size difference, real test of the techniques. He came in hard, playing his role, and Sarah dropped him with a wrist lock and hip throw that left him on his back, tapping out, nodding respect. This time the applause was genuine, scattered but real. The tide was turning. And that's when Derek Stone stepped forward. Impressive, he called out. Very graceful. But that's all choreographed, isn't it? He's helping you, waiting his turn. Out in the real world, threats don't take numbers. Sarah turned to face him. You have a question, Captain? Not a question, an observation. Derek moved to the edge of the mat, Tyler following like a shadow. No medic faces one attacker. They face multiples. Chaos. Real violence. He smiled. So how about we see what happens with two attackers? No choreography, just response. The compound went silent. Commander Harwood stepped forward. Stone, that's not in the demonstration protocol. I'm just asking to see real-world application, sir. Isn't that the point? Derek's voice was reasonable, rational, the kind of logic that sounded good and hid poison underneath. Or are we saying the techniques don't work unless everyone cooperates? Harwood looked at Sarah. She could see the question in his eyes, the offer to shut this down, to stick to the plan, to not take the bait. Sarah looked at Gunner. He stood absolutely still, not nodding, not shaking his head, just watching, trusting her to make the call. She looked at Derek, at Tyler, at the 280 men waiting to see what she'd do. Made her choice. Two attackers, she said. Full scenario, I'll demonstrate. Derek's smile widened. Outstanding. Tyler, you're with me. They stepped onto the mat. The crowd pressed closer. The morning sun beat down. Somewhere in the distance, the ocean whispered against the shore. And Sarah Mitchell, 28 years old, combat medic, Marine Recon, stood in the center of a circle and prepared to show 282 Navy SEALs exactly what happened when arrogance met training, when ego met discipline, when men who thought they were untouchable learned they were wrong. 7 seconds. That's all it would take. 7 seconds to change everything. The clock started now. Derek Stone and Tyler Grant moved into the circle with the easy confidence of men who'd never lost a fight they expected to win. Derek rolled his shoulders, a boxer's habit, muscles flexing beneath his tan t-shirt. Tyler bounced on the balls of his feet, nervous energy disguised as readiness. Around them, the crowd compressed. 282 SEALs forming a tighter ring now, sensing something in the air. The shift from demonstration to something else. Something unscripted. The kind of moment that gets remembered and retold until it becomes legend. Commander Harwood raised one hand. This remains a controlled demonstration. No strikes to the head, no intentional trauma. You will simulate engagement only. Is that understood? Yes, sir, Derek said, but his eyes never left Sarah. Tyler nodded, but the grin on his face told a different story. Chief Instructor Hayes moved to the edge of the mat, hand near his whistle. Gunner Cole stood absolutely still, arms at his sides, watching. His pale blue eyes tracked every micro movement, reading the setup like he'd read 1,000 ambushes before it. Sarah centered herself, felt the dog tags against her chest, remembered Gunner's words from that morning. Pain is data. Use it. She checked her footing, adjusted her stance, opened her hands. The mat beneath her feet was 15 feet across. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Just physics and training and the absolute certainty that what was about to happen wasn't going to follow the rules Derek had just agreed to. She could see it in the way he moved, the way Tyler mirrored him. This wasn't two men preparing for a demonstration. This was two predators coordinating a kill. The question was whether they understood they'd picked the wrong prey. Derek began to circle. Slow, deliberate. Tyler moved opposite, creating angles. Standard SEAL tactics. Divide attention, force reaction. Overwhelm through coordination. Sarah rotated, keeping both in her peripheral vision. Not panicking, not rushing, just tracking. The way she'd tracked Taliban positions in Wardak. The way she'd learned to see threats in the half-second before they materialized. In the crowd, Jake Mendez shifted his weight. Something was wrong. He could feel it. 20 years as a corpsman had given him instincts about these things. The body language wasn't right. This wasn't training, this was hunting. He glanced at Gunner. The old instructor's face was carved from stone. Waiting, watching, ready to intervene if needed, but trusting Sarah to handle it first. You look nervous, Doc, Derek said, voice calm, friendly even, but his body told the truth. Weight forward, center low, ready to explode. Just focus, Captain. Focused, good. You're going to need that. He took another step. Because out there, in country, focused is the difference between coming home and coming home in a box. Tyler moved closer from the other side. The circle tightened, 28 feet apart, then 20, then 15. Sarah's pulse stayed steady, 72 beats per minute, the same rhythm she'd maintained while cutting into Webb's leg with rounds sparking off the rocks. The same rhythm she'd learned to control during 3 deployments where panic meant death. She spoke quietly, clearly. This is not a game environment. You will follow protocol. Derek laughed. That short, nasal exhale of someone who doesn't take warnings seriously. Or what? You'll report us? Sarah met his eyes. No, I'll defend myself. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ocean seemed to hold its breath. Tyler glanced at Derek, uncertain now, looking for guidance. This was escalating past where he'd expected, past where he was comfortable. But Derek was committed, and Tyler followed Derek. That's how it worked. Derek's face hardened. Then defend yourself. What happened next took less time than a heartbeat, but unfolded with the terrible clarity of inevitability. Derek lunged from Sarah's right, Tyler from her left. Not a demonstration rush, not a training pace engagement. Real speed, real force, real intent. Their coordination was perfect. Simultaneous driving kicks, aimed to connect at the same instant, designed to overwhelm through shock and violence. Derek's boot targeted her ribs, 850 pounds per square inch of focused impact. The kind of kick that crumples body armor and breaks sternums. He'd practiced it 1,000 times. On bags, on pads, never on a person. But he knew the mechanics, knew the damage it could do. Tyler's boot aimed lower, the side of her knee, the vulnerable joint that, once collapsed, ends the fight before it begins. Simple physics, simple anatomy. Take out the base, and everything falls. Sarah saw them coming, read the tells in their hips and shoulders, understood what was happening with the crystal clarity of someone who'd seen violence before and knew its face. She tried to move, started the shift, but 15 feet isn't enough distance when two trained operators attack in concert. Physics doesn't care about fairness. Momentum doesn't negotiate. Derek's boot connected first. The impact drove through her ribs like a hammer. Pain exploded white and total across her torso. She felt something crack, felt the breath leave her lungs in a compressed gasp, felt her body start to fold. Tyler's kick landed a fraction of a second later, caught her planted leg mid-shift. The joint buckled, her base collapsed. Sarah hit the mat hard, spine first, then shoulder, then elbow. The world tilted and blurred, her vision tunneled. The sound of the impact echoed across the compound with sickening clarity. Not the rehearsed slap of training contact, the raw thud of an uncontrolled fall. The sound of bone meeting rubber with nothing in between but flesh and pain. Silence, complete and absolute silence. 282 Navy SEALs stood frozen, mouths open, eyes wide, unable to process what they just witnessed. The demonstration had shattered. The illusion of control had evaporated. This wasn't training anymore. This was assault. Commander Harwood took one step forward, stopped. His hand moved toward his sidearm, hesitated, fell back to his side. This had crossed a line. But intervening now, before understanding what happened, could make things worse. Chief Hayes stood with his whistle raised, but no sound came out. His throat had locked. 23 years teaching combat techniques, and he'd never seen anything like this. Never seen operators cross that line so blatantly. Even the ocean noise seemed to die. The wind stopped. The world contracted to 15 feet of training mat, and the woman lying broken in the center. Gunner Cole's face went white, then red. His hands clenched into fists. 40 years of discipline warred with 40 years of rage at men who used strength to hurt instead of protect. But he didn't move, couldn't move. Not yet, not without making this worse. Because he saw what others didn't, saw Sarah's chest rising and falling, saw her fingers twitch, saw the calculation happening behind her eyes, even as blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. She wasn't done. She was processing, converting pain to data like he'd taught her, deciding what came next. Sarah lay on the mat, motionless, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth where she'd bitten her lip on impact, her right side screaming where the rib had cracked, her left knee throbbing where the joint had hyperextended. Derek stood over her, breathing hard, not from exertion, from adrenaline, from the rush of dominance, from the certainty that he'd just proven his point in front of everyone who mattered. Tyler backed up 2 steps, his grin fading, starting to understand what they'd done, what it looked like, what it meant. The way Harwood was staring, the way the crowd had gone silent, not impressed, horrified. "Shit," he whispered. "Derek, I think we..." She's fine, Derek said, voice loud, projected across the compound. Just got the wind knocked out of her. Happens in training. She accepted the scenario. We delivered. But Sarah wasn't fine. She was calculating, processing, converting pain to data the way Gunnar had taught her. The cracked rib was 7th intercostal, non-displaced. Painful but not critical. The knee was hyperextended but stable. Hurt like hell but functional. She could move, could stand, could fight. The question was whether she should. The answer came from somewhere deep, not from training, not from orders, from the part of her that had crawled through Taliban fire to save Webb, from the part that had learned as a child that the world doesn't reward quiet suffering, from the part her father had built into her before he died in Iraq, his last letter still folded in her locker. Don't let them break you, baby girl, and don't break yourself trying to fit into their world. Break their world if you have to, but stand. Sarah's hand found the mat. Fingers spread, pressed down. Her gloves scraped against the rubber with a sound that somehow carried across the entire compound. A sound that made 282 men hold their breath. She pushed. Her body rose, slow, deliberate. Each movement controlled despite the pain screaming through her ribs. She got her feet under her, stood, blood on her lips, dog tags hanging visible now outside her shirt. Eyes locked forward, at Derek, at Tyler, at the two men who just crossed a line they could never uncross. The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Jesus Christ." Another operator took an involuntary step forward, then stopped, uncertain what to do. Her voice came out, quiet, flat, but it carried to every corner of that compound. "You've crossed into live response." 5 words. That's all it took. 5 words to rewrite the rules, to transform demonstration into survival, to tell every man watching that what happened next wasn't her choice anymore. It was theirs, and they'd already made it. Derek's smile faltered, just for a second, a flicker of doubt crossing his face before arrogance buried it again. She was supposed to stay down, supposed to quit, supposed to prove she couldn't handle it. Instead, she was standing, blood on her mouth, dog tags visible, eyes like ice. "You want to keep going?" he asked. "After that, you can barely stand." Sarah didn't answer. She adjusted her stance, weight distributed, hands open, every muscle coiled but relaxed. The paradox of readiness that takes years to master. And something changed in her posture. Something that made the hair on the back of Jake Mendez's neck stand up, made Gunnar close his eyes briefly in recognition, made 3 senior SEALs in the back exchange knowing glances. They'd seen this before, in Fallujah, in Ramadi, in Helmand Province. The moment when someone stops defending and starts eliminating. When survival protocols suspend and combat instinct takes over. Tyler looked at Derek. "Man, maybe we should..." She accepted the scenario, Derek cut him off. She wanted 2 attackers. We're just following through. He started to circle again. Slower this time, more cautious. Something in Sarah's posture had changed. Something that made the reptile part of his brain whisper warnings his ego refused to hear. In the crowd, Jake Mendez leaned toward another operator. "He's making a mistake." "What do you mean?" "Look at her eyes. That's not fear. That's target acquisition." 3 senior SEALs near the back had already figured it out. They'd seen that look before. In Fallujah, in Ramadi, in Helmand Province. The look someone gets right before they stop defending and start destroying. The look that says survival protocols are suspended. That hesitation is dead. That what comes next is going to be fast and permanent, and nobody walks away unchanged. Sarah spoke again, still quiet, still level. "Last chance, back to protocol." Derek cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed like gunshots. "We're way past protocol, sweetheart." "I know." 2 words. But the way she said them made Tyler Grant take an involuntary step back, made several SEALs in the crowd straighten up, made Gunnar Cole close his eyes briefly and mouth something that looked like a prayer, because he knew what was coming, had trained her for exactly this, had spent 3 weeks teaching her how to disable threats when survival demanded it, and now she was about to use every lesson he'd given her. Derek didn't see it, or saw it and didn't care. He'd committed now, in front of everyone who mattered, in front of the men he needed to impress. Backing down wasn't an option. Admitting mistake wasn't possible. So he attacked, fast, training speed fast, the kind of explosive movement that comes from years of breaching doors and clearing rooms and trusting that speed and violence of action solve every problem. He came straight in, no feint, no setup, just a driving charge meant to bulldoze through whatever defense she could muster. His forearm up, aimed to catch her sternum, use his weight to pin her, end this in one overwhelming surge. Sarah wasn't there. She rotated. One smooth motion, her left foot pivoting like a compass point, her body flowing around his charge the way water flows around stone. His arm cleared the space where her shoulder had been by 3 inches. And in that moment, when his momentum had committed him forward, and his balance was broken, and his weight was all wrong, Sarah moved. Not defending anymore, eliminating. Her left hand caught his extended wrist. Not gripping, guiding. Her right forearm planted against the inside of his knee. The vulnerable medial side where ligaments connect and joints depend on geometry to stay stable. She didn't push. She rotated, used his own driving force, turned his strength into a lever, applied pressure in the one direction the human knee was never designed to bend. The sound was unmistakable, a dry, splitting crack that cut through the morning air like a gunshot. Not loud, but clear, final. The sound of anterior cruciate ligament tearing completely, the sound of patellar tendon ripping from bone, the sound of cartilage shredding like wet paper. Derek's scream came half a second later, high-pitched, primal. The sound a man makes when his body breaks in a way that rewrites his understanding of pain. His leg collapsed inward, the knee bent 40 degrees wrong, ligaments shredding, cartilage tearing, bone grinding against bone where it should never touch. He went down, hard, face first, hands clutching at the ruined joint, the scream rising into something that wasn't quite human anymore. A sound no one in that compound would ever forget. The sound of consequence meeting arrogance at terminal velocity. Sarah was already moving. Tyler saw his mentor fall, saw the leg bent wrong, saw the reality that they'd miscalculated catastrophically. Panic overrode training. He lunged from behind, reaching for her shoulder, trying to grab, trying to stop her, trying to fix this before it got worse. Too late, always too late, because Sarah had already pivoted, had already read his approach in the shadow on the mat, had already committed to the counter before his hands left his sides. She dropped low, under his grab, her body coiling like a spring. His momentum carried him forward, off balance, reaching for what wasn't there. Sarah caught his wrist mid-lunge, stepped into his space, used his own rushing weight against him. Her hip became a fulcrum. His body became a lever, and physics did what physics always does when you understand it better than your opponent. Tyler Grant went airborne, not far, just enough to break his base, just enough to put all his weight on one planted foot, with his center of mass in exactly the wrong position. Sarah's heel came down, precise, targeted, driving directly into the lateral side of his planted leg, the fibular head, the small bone that runs alongside the shin, the weak point in the lower leg structure. The snap was different than Derek's break, deeper, wetter, the sound of bones spiraling apart under torsional stress, the sound of an ankle dislocating as the foot torqued one way and the leg stayed another. The sound of ligaments tearing and tendons ripping and joints destroying themselves under forces they were never designed to withstand. Tyler didn't scream at first, just made a sound like all the air had been punched from his lungs. Then he saw his foot, saw it dangling at 90 degrees wrong, saw the swelling already starting, saw the bone pressing against skin from the inside. Then he screamed. 7 seconds. From Derek's first charge to Tyler's collapse. 7 seconds that would be analyzed and debated and replayed in slow motion. 7 seconds that would end careers and start investigations and prove what everyone in that circle now understood with terrible clarity. Sarah Mitchell hadn't gotten lucky. She'd executed, with precision, with control, with the kind of clinical violence that comes from knowing exactly what you're doing and why. 2 men down, 2 legs broken, 1 medic standing. The silence was deafening. 282 SEALs stood frozen, some with hands half raised, some with mouths open, some with expressions that said they were witnessing something they'd never forget. Near the back, 1 operator turned and vomited. Another crossed himself. A third just stared, eyes wide, processing the impossible. That a woman half their size had just disabled 2 SEAL-trained operators in less time than it took to process what was happening. Jake Mendez broke the paralysis. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, then louder. "Corpseman! We need medical, now!" Sarah dropped to 1 knee beside Derek, checked his pulse, assessed the damage. Her voice remained steady, professional. The voice she'd used in Afghanistan when men were dying and panic was a luxury nobody could afford. Complete ACL rupture, probable patellar fracture, possible meniscus involvement. Immobilize and prepare for immediate evac. She moved to Tyler. His eyes were rolling, shock setting in. His foot hung at an obscene angle. Blood was pooling under his ankle where bone had torn through tissue. Spiral fibula fracture. Ankle dislocation. Check distal pulse. If circulation is compromised, you have 6 minutes before permanent damage. She found the pulse, weak but present, pressed her fingers to the dorsalis pedis, counted. The circulation was intact but barely. 4 minutes, she corrected. Move. 2 base corpsmen rushed onto the mat. They looked at Sarah, at the broken men, back at Sarah. One of them started to speak, stopped, just opened his trauma kit and started working. The other corpsman, a veteran named Rodriguez, recognized immediately what he was seeing. Combat medicine, the kind you practice under fire when seconds matter and hesitation kills. "You did this?" he asked Sarah. "They attacked me. I defended myself." Rodriguez looked at Derek's knee, at Tyler's ankle, at the precision of the injuries. These weren't wild swings. These were surgical strikes. Deliberate disabling of specific anatomical structures. You broke them in specific ways. I used appropriate defensive techniques. The injuries resulted from their momentum applied against stable joint structures. Rodriguez nodded slowly, understanding. She'd used their own force against them. Classic martial arts principle, except executed with combat precision and zero hesitation. Sarah stood, blood still on her lips from where she'd bitten through during the impact. Right hand pressed against her ribs where the kick had landed, but upright, steady, in control. Derek's voice cut through his pain, raw, vicious. "You fucking bitch, you broke my leg. My career is over." Sarah looked down at him. Her expression didn't change. "You attacked me, Captain. I defended myself. File a complaint." "This was a demonstration. You went too far." "No." Sarah's voice went quiet, almost gentle. "You went too far. I just finished it." Tyler was crying now, not from pain alone, from the realization that his career, his dream, his entire future had just collapsed along with his ankle. His father had died in Mogadishu, had given everything for the teams, and Tyler had just thrown away his own chance to honor that legacy. "My dad," he whispered, "my dad died for this, and I just—" He couldn't finish. Sarah checked his vitals one more time, then stood and stepped back. Let the corpsman work. Her job was done. Commander Harwood finally moved, striding onto the mat, face flushed. Whether from anger or shock or something else entirely, nobody could tell. Mitchell, with me, now. Two military police appeared as if summoned. Not hostile, just present, ready. Sarah didn't resist, didn't argue, just nodded once and followed. As she walked past Gunnar, their eyes met. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His expression said everything. Pride, concern, vindication. She'd done what he'd trained her to do. Defended herself against real attack. Used the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. And she'd done it in front of witnesses who could never claim she was the aggressor. Now came the reckoning. The crowd parted as she walked through. Some of the SEALs looked away. Others stared openly. A few whispered to each other, but the words didn't carry. The moment was too heavy, too raw. One operator, a senior chief named Marcus Williams, spoke as she passed. "That was righteous," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. They had it coming. Another SEAL nodded. "Textbook self-defense. Hope Command sees it that way." But not everyone agreed. Near the front, one of Derek's friends, a SEAL named Brad Chen, shook his head. "She went too far," he muttered. "Could have just disabled them. Didn't have to break them." Jake Mendez rounded on him. "She was on the ground, injured, outnumbered. What the hell was she supposed to do? Ask them nicely to stop? She's trained. She could have controlled the force better." "Bullshit. You saw the attack. That was coordinated, premeditated. She defended herself and immediately rendered aid. That's more restraint than most operators would have shown." Behind them, the corpsman worked frantically. Derek's screams had subsided to harsh breathing. Tyler had gone silent, drifting into shock. The sound of Velcro and splints and urgent medical terminology filled the space where violence had just lived. Gunnar watched it all, his face unreadable. But inside his mind was racing, calculating, planning, because this wasn't over. The physical fight was done, but the bureaucratic battle was just beginning. And Sarah would need someone who knew how the system worked. Someone who could navigate the investigation. Someone who understood that doing the right thing in the moment didn't always protect you from the consequences after. He'd failed his team in Vietnam, let them down when they needed him most. He wouldn't fail Sarah. Sarah walked with her head up, back straight, because showing weakness now would validate everything Derek had believed about her, would prove that breaking her was possible, would make the next woman who tried to stand in this space face even worse. So she walked like she owned every step, like the blood on her mouth was a badge instead of an injury, like the two broken men behind her were a necessary consequence instead of a tragedy. The MPs escorted her to Building 7, third floor, a room with a metal table and 4 chairs and no windows. They gestured for her to sit. She did. They left, locked the door from outside. And for the first time since Wardock, Sarah Mitchell let herself shake. Not from fear, from aftermath, from the adrenaline finally crashing, from the understanding that she just ended 2 careers, and possibly her own, in 7 seconds of violence that would be scrutinized and questioned and judged by people who'd never had to make that choice. Her ribs throbbed. Each breath sent fire through her right side. She lifted her shirt. The bruise was already forming, deep purple spreading across her 7th rib. Cracked, almost certainly, maybe worse. She touched the area gently, felt the grating sensation of bone fragments shifting. Definitely cracked, possibly multiple fractures. She'd need x-rays, but that could wait. Small price, compared to what could have happened, compared to what they'd intended. She touched Gunnar's dog tags, closed her eyes, and waited. The investigation began within the hour. Captain Lisa Tran arrived first, JAG officer, former Marine, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She introduced herself without preamble, set a recorder on the table, and got to work. Petty Officer Mitchell, you understand you're not under arrest or formal accusation at this time. This is an investigative interview. You have the right to legal counsel. Do you wish to have an attorney present? No, ma'am. You're certain? I have nothing to hide. Tran studied her, seeing the blood, the bruise visible at the collar, the steady hands despite what had just happened. This woman had just broken two men and was sitting here calm as glass. Either she was in shock or she was the most controlled person Tran had ever interviewed. Very well, let's start at the beginning. Why did you accept the two-attacker scenario when it wasn't part of the approved demonstration protocol? Sarah chose her words carefully. Because it's the reality combat medics face in hostile territory. Denying that reality is a disservice to the training. I believed I could demonstrate appropriate defensive techniques. I was willing to try. And when Captain Stone and Lieutenant Grant entered the circle, I assessed their body language, their positioning, their coordination. Sarah paused. In my professional judgment as someone with 3 combat deployments, they were not preparing for a controlled demonstration. What did their body language tell you? That they intended to hurt me. Tran leaned forward. Not just win the demonstration, actually hurt you? Yes, ma'am. What made you certain? Sarah met her eyes. I've seen men prepare to kill. In Afghanistan, in training. There's a difference between competition and intent to harm. They had the latter. Did you communicate this assessment to anyone? I gave a verbal warning. I stated clearly that this was not a game environment and they needed to follow protocol. And their response? Captain Stone asked what I would do if they didn't. I told him I would defend myself. And then they attacked me. The words hung in the air. Simple, factual, devastating. Tran made a note. Describe the attack. Sarah walked through it. The coordination, the simultaneous kicks, the impact, the fall. Her voice stayed steady throughout, clinical, a medic describing injuries, a soldier reporting contact. I felt Captain Stone's boot connect with my right lateral rib cage at approximately the 7th intercostal space. The force was sufficient to fracture the rib and knock me off balance. Simultaneously, Lieutenant Grant's kick struck my left knee, causing hyperextension and compromising my base. I fell to the mat, striking my spine, shoulder, and elbow in succession. And your response? I defended myself using appropriate force escalation. Appropriate? Tran's eyebrow rose. You broke Captain Stone's knee and Lieutenant Grant's ankle. Both men will require surgery. Both face months of recovery. Both careers are likely over. Yes, ma'am. And you consider that appropriate? Sarah leaned forward despite the pain in her ribs. Ma'am, with respect, I had just been struck with coordinated force by 2 men who outweighed me by a combined 200 pounds. I was injured, outnumbered, and they showed no intention of stopping. If I had hesitated, if I had shown weakness, they would have continued the assault. Her voice hardened. I used the minimum force necessary to neutralize the immediate threat. The injuries they sustained were the direct result of their own momentum applied against proper defensive technique. You could have simply retreated, called for help. Where? The crowd was a wall, and calling for help requires time I didn't have. Man, I've treated casualties in combat. I've seen what happens when someone hesitates for 1 second too long. They die. I wasn't going to die on that mat because 2 men decided to prove a point. Tran sat back, made another note. You served as a Marine before transferring to Navy? Yes, ma'am, 3 deployments, 2 as combat field medic, 1 embedded with Force Recon. And you received a Bronze Star with Valor for actions in Wardak Province? Yes, ma'am. Tell me about that. Sarah did. The ambush, the IED, web bleeding out, the improvised surgery under fire, Taliban closing in, the Black Hawk extraction. She told it the same way she'd told the investigation board in Afghanistan. Facts, sequence, outcome, no embellishment, No heroics. When she finished, Tran was quiet for a long moment. "That's remarkable," she finally said. "That was my job." "No, your job was to provide medical support. What you did was combat medicine at the highest level, under the worst possible circumstances." Tran closed her notebook. "Which brings us back to today. You've demonstrated you can operate under extreme pressure, that you can make split-second decisions, that you can use violence when necessary to preserve life." "Yes, ma'am. The question is whether what you did today was necessary or excessive." The door opened. Commander Frank Morrison entered, Navy Intelligence, 55 years old, Vietnam service ribbon on his chest. The kind of investigator who'd seen every lie and believed none of them. He carried a laptop, set it on the table, opened it. "We have footage," he said without preamble. "Security cameras, multiple angles, and something else." He turned the screen. Lieutenant Grant was wearing a helmet cam during the demonstration. It recorded everything. He pressed play. The audio was clear, tinny through the laptop speakers, but unmistakable. Derek's voice, Tyler's response. "Follow my lead. We'll show these brass what happens when politics meets reality." "How hard?" "Hard enough she needs a stretcher. They'll call it training accident." Tran's expression didn't change, but something hardened behind her eyes. This wasn't self-defense. This was assault with premeditation. And Sarah had responded exactly as she should have. Morrison played it twice more. Let the words sink in. Let them understand the depth of what Stone and Grant had planned. This wasn't machismo gone wrong. This was deliberate intent to injure. Then he showed the video. Multiple angles. The attack in slow motion. Derek and Tyler's coordinated rush. The precision of their timing. The force of their kicks. The way Sarah's body folded on impact. Then Sarah's fall. The impact clearly visible. The way her body hit the mat. The blood on her lips. The 7 seconds she lay there, processing, calculating. And then the counter. Frame by frame. Derek's charge. Sarah's rotation. The wrist capture. The knee strike. The terrible geometry of a joint destroyed by its own momentum. Then Tyler's lunge. Sarah's drop and pivot, the hip throw, the heel strike, the spiral fracture visible in the way his leg twisted. Morrison closed the laptop. 7 seconds, start to finish. 2 men down, both with injuries that will require extensive surgery and rehabilitation. He looked at Sarah. "I've reviewed approximately 40 hours of footage from this facility. Training sessions, live demonstrations, mock combat scenarios. I've never seen anything like what you just did." "Is that a question, sir?" "No, it's an observation. You're a combat medic, not a martial arts instructor, not a hand-to-hand specialist. Yet you disabled 2 SEAL-trained operators in less time than it takes most people to process what's happening." He paused. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Sarah glanced at Tran. The JAG officer nodded once. Permission to answer. "Master Sergeant Cole trained me, sir. For the past 3 weeks, he believed the demonstration scenarios would escalate, that I needed to be prepared for real confrontation, not just rehearsed sequences." "Did he specifically train you to break knees?" "He trained me to neutralize threats using anatomical vulnerabilities and momentum redirection. The specific injuries resulted from the attacker's force being applied against stable joint positions. I didn't generate the power that broke them. They did." Morrison exchanged a look with Tran. "That's a very precise explanation." "It's the truth, sir." "Truth." Morrison stood, paced to the window, looked out at the base beyond. "Truth is complicated, petty officer. The truth is 2 decorated operators are in surgery right now. The truth is this incident will be national news within 24 hours. The truth is politicians and activists and pundits are going to use this to advance whatever agenda serves their purposes." He turned back. "And the truth is, I need to determine whether you defended yourself or committed assault." Sarah held his gaze. "Then watch the footage again, sir. and ask yourself what you would have done in my position." Silence stretched. Tran reviewed her notes. Morrison stared at Sarah like he was trying to read her soul through her eyes. Finally, he spoke. "We'll need formal statements from witnesses, medical reports, expert analysis of the techniques used. This investigation will take at least 72 hours. Until then, you're confined to base. No communication with other personnel. No discussion of the incident. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Dismissed. The MPs escorted her to temporary quarters, a small room in the transient barracks. Bed, desk, window overlooking the training compound where it had all happened. They posted one guard outside her door, not hostile, just procedure. Sarah sat on the bed. Let the adrenaline finally drain. Let the pain in her ribs announce itself properly. Let the reality settle. She'd broken two men, ended their careers, changed the trajectory of her own life in 7 seconds of violence that could go either way depending on how the brass decided to spin it. No regrets. Not yet. Maybe later. But not now. Now she just hurt, and waited, and wondered what Gunnar was thinking. Whether he blamed himself for training her so well. Whether he understood she'd had no choice. The answer came 2 hours later. A knock at the door. The guard opened it. Gunnar Cole stepped inside. The guard hesitated, then stepped back and closed the door, giving them privacy, breaking protocol. But some things mattered more than regulations. Gunnar looked at her, really looked, saw the bruise, the careful way she held her ribs, the blood she'd finally wiped from her mouth. "How bad?" he asked. "Cracked rib, maybe 2, nothing displaced. You should be in medical." "I've had worse." "I know." He sat in the desk chair, slowly, like his back hurt, like the years were catching up. "I watched the whole thing, from start to finish. And you did exactly what I trained you to do. You read the threat, gave warning, responded with appropriate force when attacked." His voice roughened. "You showed more restraint than I would have, more control. If that had been me, they'd still be alive. But they wouldn't be walking ever again. I didn't want to hurt them. I know, but they gave you no choice. And every man in that compound knows it." Gunnar leaned forward. "They're calling it the 7-second battle. Already got a name. Some are saying you went too far. Most are saying Stone and Grant got exactly what they asked for." "What are you saying?" Gunnar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades, of caisson and lost brothers, and 40 years of trying to make peace with failure. "I'm saying I've been training SEALs for 26 years. I've seen the best operators this country produces. The strongest, the fastest, the most technically proficient." He paused. "And in 7 seconds, you showed them something they needed to see. That skill beats strength. That discipline beats ego. That the person you underestimate is the one who beats you. They're going to crucify me for this. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the investigation. Depends on the footage. Depends on whether command has the guts to admit Stone and Grant violated every protocol and got what they deserved." He pulled out his dog tags, the ones she'd been wearing, the ones that had fallen outside her shirt during the fight. "But regardless of what happens, you wore these today. You honored them. You honored every medic who ever had to fight while trying to save a life." Sarah took the tags, felt their familiar weight. "Your father would be proud," Gunnar said quietly. "I never met him, but I read about him. Iraq, 2007, led his platoon through an ambush, took rounds covering his men's retreat. Bronze Star posthumous. How did you—" "I read your full file, not the sanitized version they give most instructors, the classified one." Gunnar stood. "Your father taught you to stand, to fight for what matters, to protect the people who can't protect themselves. Today you honored that. You honored him." Sarah's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak. Gunnar moved to the door, paused. "They're going to try to make this about gender, about politics, about integration and quotas and all the bullshit that has nothing to do with what really happened. What really happened? Two bullies tried to hurt someone who couldn't fight back and found out they were wrong. He met her eyes one last time. That's the story. That's the truth. Don't let them rewrite it into anything else. He left. Sarah sat alone in the small room, holding his dog tags, feeling her ribs throb with each breath, and understanding that the real battle hadn't even started yet. The physical fight was over. The political one was just beginning. 72 hours. That's how long Morrison said the investigation would take. Sarah spent them in isolation. No phone, no computer, no contact with anyone except the guard who brought her meals and the base medic who checked her ribs and confirmed the crack and wrapped them tight and told her she was lucky it wasn't worse. She didn't feel lucky. She felt like a prisoner waiting for a verdict that would determine the rest of her life. On hour 48, they brought in the witnesses. Sarah didn't see them, but she heard about it from the medic. 43 SEALs had given formal statements. The testimony varied, but the consensus was clear. Stone and Grant attacked first. Mitchell defended herself. The force was appropriate given the circumstances. Jake Mendez's statement was read to her by Captain Tran on hour 60. I've been a SEAL for 16 years. I've seen combat in 4 theaters. I've witnessed violence in every form it takes. What Petty Officer Mitchell did today was the most controlled application of defensive force I've ever witnessed. She could have killed both men. She didn't. She disabled them precisely, proportionally, and immediately rendered medical aid. That's not assault. That's discipline. Another statement from an anonymous operator. Stone has been a problem for 2 years, hazing younger guys, bullying support personnel. This was coming. We all knew it. We just didn't think anyone would have the guts to stop him. And Gunner's official testimony, read in Morrison's flat voice. Petty Officer Mitchell demonstrated textbook defensive force escalation. Every technique she employed is part of standard SEAL hand-to-hand curriculum. The only difference is she executed them perfectly under real threat conditions. Any failure here belongs to Stone and Grant for violating engagement protocols and attacking a fellow service member during a training demonstration. Hour 71. The medical reports arrived. Detailed, clinical, devastating. Derek Stone, complete anterior cruciate ligament rupture, patellar fracture with displacement, meniscus tear, tibial plateau compression, estimated recovery 12 to 18 months, probable medical discharge. Tyler Grant, spiral fibula fracture, tibial involvement, complete ankle dislocation, vascular compromise for approximately 4 minutes before medical intervention. Estimated recovery 9 to 12 months. Permanent mobility impairment likely. Sarah Mitchell, 7th rib fracture, non-displaced. Labial laceration, soft tissue trauma to right side. Recommended duty restriction for 2 weeks. The disparity was stark. 2 men broken, 1 woman bruised but functional. Tran read the reports aloud, watched Sarah's face for reaction, found none. Do you feel any remorse? The JAG officer asked. Sarah considered the question, answered honestly. I regret that it happened. I don't regret how I responded. That's a careful distinction. It's an important one. I didn't want to hurt them, but when they attacked me, I did what was necessary to survive. If that same situation happened tomorrow, I'd respond the same way. Even knowing the consequences? Especially knowing the consequences, because the alternative was letting them hurt me without resistance, and I've spent my entire career refusing to be a victim. Tran made a final note, closed her file. The board will convene tomorrow morning at 0900. You'll be informed of the decision by noon. And until then, you wait. Sarah waited. Through the night, through the dawn, through breakfast she couldn't eat, and coffee that tasted like ash. At 08:55, the guard opened her door. They're ready for you. The conference room held 6 people. Commander Harwood, Captain Tran, Commander Morrison, Master Chief Daniel Reeves, who oversaw all SEAL training operations, a civilian attorney from JAG, and Gunner Cole, called as expert witness. Sarah stood at attention, waited. Master Chief Reeves spoke. His voice carried the authority of 30 years in the teams, 3 wars, more operations than most men could imagine. Petty Officer First Class Sarah Mitchell. This board has completed its investigation into the events of Friday, 0800 hours, at Naval Special Warfare Command Training Facility. We have reviewed security footage, witness testimony, medical reports, and expert analysis. He paused. Sarah's heart hammered against her cracked rib. Our findings are as follows. First, the attack initiated by Captain Stone and Lieutenant Grant was premeditated, coordinated, and executed with intent to cause injury. Second, your verbal warning was clear and appropriate. Third, your defensive response was proportional to the threat and consistent with approved hand-to-hand combat techniques. Fourth, you immediately rendered medical aid to both injured parties following the engagement. Another pause, longer this time. Therefore, this board finds no violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, no excessive use of force, no deviation from proper defensive protocols. You are cleared of all potential charges and will resume normal duties effective immediately. Sarah felt her knees weaken, forced them to lock. Reeves continued, however, Captain Derek Stone and Lieutenant Tyler Grant have been found in violation of Article 92, dereliction of duty, and Article 128, assault. Captain Stone is hereby relieved of all command responsibilities pending medical evaluation and administrative separation. Lieutenant Grant is removed from SEAL training pipeline effective immediately and faces possible dishonorable discharge pending additional review. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Do you have any questions, Petty Officer? No, sir. Then you're dismissed. Sarah saluted, turned to leave. Reeves's voice stopped her. Mitchell, one more thing. She looked back. What you did took courage. Not the fight, the decision to stand up when most people would have backed down. That kind of courage is what this uniform represents. Don't lose it. I won't, sir. Outside, the California sun was bright enough to hurt. Sarah walked across the compound, free for the first time in 3 days. Her ribs ached. Her body was exhausted. But something else stirred in her chest. Not pride, not satisfaction, relief. And the understanding that she'd crossed a threshold she could never uncross. She found Gunner at the memorial wall. The long, black granite surface engraved with names of SEALs who died in service. He stood in front of the Vietnam section. Reading names he probably knew by heart. He didn't turn when she approached, just kept reading. They cleared you, he said, not a question. Yes. Stone and Grant? Out, both of them. Gunner nodded slowly. Good. They dishonored the Trident. They dishonored every man who earned it the right way. Sarah stood beside him. Read some of the names. Boys who died in jungles and rivers and villages most Americans couldn't find on a map. You thinking about your team? She asked. Always. His finger traced one name. Corporal James Riley. He was my best friend. Died because I froze. Because I didn't have the training, the guts, the skill. He dropped his hand. I've spent 40 years teaching other people to be what I couldn't. And today you proved it worked. You stood when I fell. You fought when I froze. You didn't freeze with me. You prepared me. That's not the same as being there, as doing it myself. Sarah touched his arm. Gunner, you saved my life by teaching me how to save my own. That counts. He finally looked at her, eyes wet but not crying. Your dad would be proud. You know that? You told me already. Bears repeating, he straightened. You've got a choice now. Take the cleared record and request transfer somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, or stay here and finish what you started. What did I start? changing minds, proving capability, showing that the mission matters more than the messenger. Gunner's voice steadied. They're going to offer you an instructor position, training development division, teaching combat medics the techniques you demonstrated. It's a good assignment, important work. But it also puts you in the spotlight. Every woman who comes after you, they'll compare to you. Every man who resents what you represent, they'll remember what happened to Stone and Grant. You'll be a symbol, whether you want to be or not. Sarah looked back at the names on the wall. The men who died for something bigger than themselves, who'd accepted missions they knew might kill them, who'd understood that sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones you choose, but the ones that choose you. I didn't come here to be a symbol, she said. I came here to do a job. I know, but sometimes the job finds you anyway. Then I'll do it, Gunner smiled. First real smile she'd seen from him. Good, because we've got work to do. First Combat Medic Defense course starts in 3 weeks. 40 students, multiple services, and you're the lead instructor. You'll help? Every step, but this is your show now, your legacy. He handed her something, a worn medic bag, canvas, stained, his name still stenciled on the side from 50 years ago. Carried this through Khe-Sanh, through every operation after. Now it's yours. Sarah took it, felt the history in her hands, the weight of expectation and trust, and the understanding that she just accepted responsibility for something bigger than one fight, bigger than one demonstration. She'd accepted the mission to prove that strength comes in forms men like Derek Stone refuse to recognize, that courage isn't measured in pounds or inches, that the quiet ones, the underestimated ones, the ones dismissed before they ever get a chance, those are the ones who change the world. She walked back to her quarters carrying Gunner's bag, wearing his dog tags, understanding that part 2 was over, the real work was just beginning. The paperwork arrived on Sarah's desk 3 days after the verdict. Official orders, typed on Navy letterhead, signed by Master Chief Reeves himself. Petty Officer, First Class Sarah Mitchell, reassigned to Training Development Division. Primary duty, lead instructor, Combat Medic Advanced Defense Program. Effective immediately. Authority to develop curriculum, select assistant instructors, and establish protocols for all branches of service. Sarah read it twice. The words didn't change. They'd given her exactly what Gunner predicted. Not a punishment, not a reward, a responsibility. The kind that comes with expectations and scrutiny and the weight of everyone watching to see if you fail. She folded the orders and slipped them into her pocket, looked out the window of her small office at the training compound beyond. The same mat where it had happened, already back in use. SEALs running drills like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She could see it in the way they moved around her now. The double takes in the chow hall, the wider berth they gave her in hallways. Not quite fear, not quite respect. Something in between. Recognition that the quiet medic had teeth and knew how to use them. The door opened without a knock. Gunner limped in carrying 2 coffees, set one on her desk, took the chair across from her without asking. You read the orders? He asked. Just now. And I'm wondering what I've gotten myself into. Gunner sipped his coffee, made a face. Same swill they've been serving since Vietnam. You'd think they'd improve something in 50 years. He set the cup down. You got yourself into exactly what was always going to happen. Someone had to be first. Turns out it's you. First what? First woman to break the barrier. First to prove it could be done. First to make them reconsider everything they thought they knew. He leaned back. Webb started it by surviving. You finished it by standing up. Now you get to live with being the example. Sarah touched her ribs, still tender, the wrap tight beneath her uniform. Some example. I put 2 men in the hospital. 2 men who attacked you in front of witnesses after planning it ahead of time. Don't rewrite history to make yourself feel bad. Gunner's voice hardened. Stone and Grant made their choice. They live with consequences. So do you. Difference is your consequences mean something. Theirs just mean they're done. Have you heard anything about them? Stone's in surgery, third operation on that knee. Doctors are saying maybe 70% function if he's lucky. Grant's ankle is worse. Vascular damage, nerve damage. He'll walk with a limp for life. Gunnar paused. Both facing administrative separation. Stone might keep his pension. Grant's looking at other than honorable discharge. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. Not quite guilt, not quite satisfaction. 2 careers ended, 2 lives permanently altered because she'd defended herself. No, because they'd attacked her. Important distinction. Their careers are over, she said. Their careers were over the moment they decided attacking you was more important than their honor. Don't carry that weight. They earned it themselves. Outside, a training cadre ran past, 30 recruits in formation, their voices calling cadence, the eternal rhythm of the military. New faces learning old lessons, the cycle continuing regardless of what happened to individuals. First class starts in 3 weeks, Sarah said. 40 students. I've never taught before, not like this. You taught me something on that mat, Gunnar replied. Taught everyone watching. You'll do fine. What if I can't? What if I freeze up there in front of them? Then you remember Wardak. Remember Webb bleeding out. Remember working under fire with Taliban closing in. Gunnar's eyes found hers. You've already done the hardest thing. Teaching people how to do it is easy by comparison. The 3 weeks passed like a countdown. Sarah spent them developing curriculum with Gunnar's help, breaking down every technique, every principle, every lesson learned from 3 deployments and 1 catastrophic demonstration. She requisitioned mats and equipment, selected assistant instructors from the base staff, set up evaluation criteria and safety protocols and medical support, built the program from nothing because nothing like it had existed before. She worked 16-hour days, reviewed footage of the incident frame by frame to understand exactly what she'd done and why it worked, consulted with biomechanics experts to ensure the techniques could be safely taught, developed progression sequences that would build skills without injuring students. The work consumed her, which was good, because when she stopped working, she thought about Derek and Tyler, about the sounds they'd made when their bodies broke, about whether she could have done something different. Gunnar found her in the office late one night, staring at freeze frames on her computer screen. You can't change what happened, he said. I know. So stop trying to find a different outcome. There wasn't one. They attacked. You defended. End of story. It's not that simple. Yeah, it is. Gunnar sat down. You're looking for a version where everyone walks away intact, where you can prove your point without hurting anyone. That version doesn't exist. Combat doesn't work that way. They forced the situation. You handled it, accept it, and move forward. Sarah closed the laptop. How do you live with it? The men you lost, the decisions you made. Some days better than others. But I learned something over 40 years. You can't carry the dead. They're gone. All you can do is honor them by making sure their sacrifice meant something, by teaching the next generation to do better. His voice softened. Stone and Grant aren't dead. They're just done. And that's on them, not you. On the evening before the first class, she stood alone in the training facility. The same building where it had happened. Different room, different purpose, but the ghosts were there. Derek's scream, Tyler's broken ankle, the sound of her own ribs cracking. Talking to yourself? Jake Mendez stood in the doorway, the SEAL corpsman who'd been one of the first to support her publicly. 40 years old, steady eyes, the kind of medic who'd seen everything and kept working anyway. Just thinking, Sarah said. Dangerous habit. Jake moved into the room, looked around. Heard you're starting the new program tomorrow. 40 students. That's the plan. Good, we need it. I've been a corpsman for 18 years. Seen too many medics freeze when things get violent. Too many who think their Red Cross makes them safe. He picked up one of the training pads. What you did showed them different. Showed all of us different. I didn't mean to. Best lessons never are. Jake set the pad down. I wanted to tell you something. About Stone. Sarah tensed. What about him? He's still in medical, recovering from his 3rd surgery. And 2 days ago he asked to see me. Said he wanted to talk to someone who was there. Jake leaned against the wall. So I went. And he's broken. Not just his leg, everything. He knows his career's over. Knows it's his fault. Knows he destroyed everything because he couldn't handle a woman being better than him. Jake's voice softened. He asked me to give you something. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. Standard Navy issue. Sealed. Sarah's name written on the front in shaky handwriting. She took it. What is it? He didn't say. Just asked me to make sure you got it. Jake straightened. For what it's worth, I don't think you owe him anything. Not forgiveness, not sympathy, nothing. But he wrote it. Seemed important to him that you read it. Jake left. Sarah stood holding the envelope. Part of her wanted to throw it away unread. The other part, the medic part, couldn't ignore someone reaching out, even from the wreckage of their own making. She opened it. The handwriting was cramped, unsteady, the words difficult to read in places. But the message was clear. Petty Officer Mitchell, I don't expect you to forgive what I did. I don't forgive myself. I've spent 3 days lying in this bed trying to understand how I became the kind of man who'd attack someone just to prove I still mattered. The truth is, I've been that man for years. You just forced me to see it. My father visited yesterday, Rear Admiral Thomas Stone. He told me I dishonored our name and the Trident and every man who'd ever earned it honestly. He's right. I wanted to blame you, blame politics, blame anything except my own cowardice. But lying here, unable to walk, unable to do anything except think, I've realized something. You weren't the enemy. My ego was. My fear was. My inability to accept that the world was changing, and I needed to change with it. You showed courage. I showed cowardice. You showed discipline. I showed ego. You honored the uniform. I disgraced it. I'm writing this because you deserve to know that what happened wasn't your fault. You defended yourself against an attack I planned and executed. The consequences are mine alone. And if somehow this letter helps you carry less weight, then maybe it's worth something. I'll never wear the Trident again, never serve again, never be the man I thought I was. But maybe I can become something better than what I've been. Maybe facing what I did is the first step. I'm sorry for what I did, for what I represented, for the example I set. You deserved better. The teams deserve better. I just wish I'd figured that out before I destroyed everything. Respectfully, Derek Stone. Sarah read it twice, folded it carefully, slipped it into her desk drawer. She didn't know what to feel, didn't know if forgiveness was appropriate or necessary or even possible. But she recognized something in the words, the beginning of understanding, the first step of a very long journey. Maybe that was enough. Maybe redemption wasn't about forgiveness, but about acknowledgement, about facing what you'd done and choosing to be better. She left the letter in the drawer and went to prepare for tomorrow. The first class assembled at 0600. 40 combat medics from all branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, ages ranging from 22 to 38. Experience levels from fresh out of training to multiple combat deployments. Sarah stood at the front of the room in her utilities. No rank displayed, no decorations, just the uniform and gunner's dog tags visible at her collar. She let them settle, let them look, let them wonder. In the front row sat Corporal Amy Chen, 22 years old, Army medic, fresh face, nervous eyes. She'd written in her application that she'd seen the video, that Sarah was the reason she'd signed up for this course. Sarah made a mental note. Don't let her make you a hero. Make her make herself capable. Behind Amy sat Staff Sergeant Marcus Reeves, 35, Marine Corps, 2 Afghanistan deployments, burn scars on his left arm from an IED blast. He sat with arms crossed, expression skeptical but willing to be convinced. Next to him, Navy Corpsman Daniel Park, 28, Korean American, stocky build, already had combat experience in Syria. He'd written that he'd been grabbed from behind while treating a casualty and barely escaped. Wanted to make sure it never happened again. Air Force Pararescue Specialist Jennifer Walsh, 31, blonde, 6 feet tall, former college volleyball player. She sat in the back, observing everything, missing nothing. Sarah let the silence stretch, let them get uncomfortable, then spoke. "My name is Petty Officer Mitchell," Sarah began, voice level, carrying to the back of the room. "For the next 6 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to defend yourself while treating casualties in hostile environments. Some of you have combat experience, some don't. Doesn't matter. Everything you think you know about fighting while you work, forget it. We're starting from scratch." She gestured to Gunner, standing at the side of the room. "Master Sergeant Cole is my assistant instructor. He's been teaching combat techniques for 26 years. He's forgotten more about fighting than most people ever learn. When he speaks, you listen." Gunner nodded but didn't step forward. This was her show. "I'm going to tell you something right now," Sarah continued, "and I need you to hear it. Really hear it. You are not safe because you're a medic. The red cross on your arm is a target, not a shield. The enemy doesn't care about Geneva Convention. They care about removing your capability to keep their enemies alive." She paused. Let that sink in. Saw some faces pale, others harden. Good. They needed to understand the reality. 3 months ago, I was in Afghanistan, Wardak Province. My patrol got hit by an IED. 3 men down, Caliban closing fast. I had 90 seconds to stop a femoral bleed or my patient died. I also had AK rounds sparking off the rocks around me. I had to work and fight simultaneously. Most of you will face that scenario eventually. This course teaches you how to survive it. Amy Chen's hand went up. Sarah nodded. "Ma'am, is it true you broke 2 Navy SEALs in a training demonstration?" The room went silent. 40 sets of eyes locked on Sarah, waiting. "Yes," Sarah said simply. "I did. They attacked me during a demonstration. I defended myself. They were injured. I was cleared by investigation. That's all I'll say about it publicly." "But ma'am," Marcus Reeves spoke up. His voice carried the authority of a combat veteran. "How does someone your size take down 2 operators that big?" That's exactly what this course teaches. Size doesn't matter if you understand leverage and momentum. Strength doesn't matter if you know anatomical vulnerabilities. Confidence doesn't matter if your opponent has better training. Sarah moved to the center of the mat. "I'm going to show you. I need a volunteer, someone big, someone who thinks they can overpower me." Nobody moved. Nobody wanted to be the next cautionary tale. "Come on," Sarah said. "This is a learning environment. Nobody's getting hurt. I need someone to demonstrate on." Finally, a hand went up. Navy Corpsman, 6'2", 220 pounds. Name tag read, Morrison. No relation to the investigator. "Corpsman Morrison, come up here." He approached cautiously. Sarah positioned him. "Morrison, I want you to grab me from behind. Bear hug. Pin my arms. Use your full strength. Try to actually restrain me." "Ma'am, I don't want to hurt you." "You won't, trust me." Morrison hesitated, then wrapped his arms around her from behind, squeezed, lifted her slightly off the ground, used his size advantage fully. The class watched intently. This was impossible. He outweighed her by 90 pounds, had 8 inches of reach. She couldn't possibly. Sarah didn't struggle, didn't panic, just waited for him to commit his weight. Then she moved. Drop her center, shift her hips, trap his right arm with her left. rotate her body, step behind his planted leg, use his own squeezing force to throw him off balance. 3 seconds from grabbed to throwing him over her hip onto the mat. Not hard, controlled, but effective. Morrison landed flat on his back, wind knocked out, staring up at the ceiling in surprise. The class erupted in murmurs. That was impossible. She'd just thrown a man twice her size like he weighed nothing. Sarah offered her hand, helped him up. Thank you, Morrison. That's the principle. He had every advantage, size, strength, position, but he didn't have leverage. He didn't have technique. So his advantages became liabilities. She turned to the class. That's what we're teaching. How to turn your opponent's strength against them. How to defend while you work. How to survive when survival seems impossible. For the next 6 hours, she walked them through basics. Stance, movement, reading body language, escape techniques, joint locks, pressure points. Everything Gunnar had taught her, broken down into teachable pieces. Some students picked it up quickly. Jennifer Walsh moved like a natural athlete, translating her sports background into combat technique. Daniel Park struggled at first, but had the determination to keep trying until he got it right. Others struggled. Amy Chen fell twice trying a simple hip throw. Got frustrated. Sarah pulled her aside. You're thinking too much, Sarah said. Trying to muscle it. This isn't about strength. It's about timing and position. I can't do it. Yes, you can. You just haven't yet. There's a difference. Sarah demonstrated again, slowly. See? I'm not pulling him. I'm letting his momentum do the work. I'm just guiding where it goes. Amy tried again. This time it clicked. Her partner went down smooth and controlled. Her face lit up. I did it! You did! Now do it 999 more times until it's automatic. The days blurred together. Training from 0600 to 1800. Technique work, sparring, scenario drills. Sarah pushed them hard, but never beyond their limits. Never asked them to do what she wouldn't demonstrate first. Gunnar watched from the sidelines, occasionally stepped in to correct form or explain principle, but mostly let Sarah run it. Let her find her teaching voice. Let her become what she needed to become. He saw her natural talent for instruction, the way she could break down complex movements into simple steps, the way she could read when a student was frustrated and needed encouragement versus when they needed to be pushed harder. Most importantly, he saw her patience. She never lost her temper, never made students feel stupid, just kept working with them until they got it right. On day 12, they introduced stress inoculation, live scenarios with role players, simulated casualties, simulated attackers, noise and chaos and the kind of pressure that makes people forget their training. Amy Chen froze. A role player grabbed her from behind while she was treating a fake wound. She panicked, couldn't remember the escape, started to cry. Sarah called halt, pulled Amy aside, away from the group. What happened? I froze, just like you said not to. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Freezing is normal. It's your brain trying to protect you by shutting down. We just have to teach it a better response. Sarah's voice gentled. Why did you sign up for this course? Because I saw what you did. Because I want to be like you. Stop. Right there. Don't want to be like me. Want to be like you at your best. I'm not your standard. You are. But you're so strong, so confident. You faced 2 SEALs in one. No, I faced 2 men who attacked me and I survived using training. That's all. I'm not superhuman. I'm not fearless. I've frozen too. In Afghanistan, first month there, mortar attack. I spent 10 minutes under a Humvee shaking so hard I couldn't hold my rifle. Sarah met Amy's eyes. Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing the job anyway. How do I do that? Practice until the technique is automatic, until your hands move before your brain catches up, until survival becomes reflex instead of choice. Sarah stood. Come on, we're running that scenario again, and you're going to succeed this time because you know what to expect. They ran it again. Amy still hesitated but didn't freeze. Got the escape, finished treating her patient, completed the scenario. Sarah nodded approval. Better. We'll keep drilling until better becomes good. Good becomes great. Great becomes automatic. Week 3 brought full contact sparring, padded gear, real intensity. Sarah paired herself with the biggest male student, Marcus Reeves, 6'4", 250, former linebacker before he enlisted. They went 3 rounds. He used his size, his reach, his strength. Sarah used everything Gunnar taught her. Stayed close where his size was liability. Attacked joints and balance. Made him work for every inch. 3rd round, she caught him with the same wrist lock and knee strike she'd used on Derek. Didn't break anything, pulled the power. But he went down and tapped out and stood up with new respect in his eyes. Jesus, ma'am, that would have destroyed my knee if you'd followed through. That's the point. You don't follow through in training, but you know you could if you had to. That knowledge builds confidence. By week 4, the class was transforming. The uncertain medics who'd arrived were becoming something else. Not fighters, not operators, but combat medics who understood they could defend themselves. Who knew that size wasn't destiny. Who'd internalized that survival was a skill you could learn. Jake Mendez visited during week 5. Watched the training, pulled Sarah aside afterward. They look good, he said, confident, capable. They're getting there. Word's spreading. About this program, about what you're doing. Command is already talking about making it mandatory for all combat medics. Every branch. Sarah felt the weight of that. That's a lot of responsibility. Yeah, but you've proven you can handle it. Jake paused. I wanted to tell you something else. About Grant. Tyler Grant? Yeah, he's out. Discharged 3 days ago. Other than honorable, no pension, no benefits, nothing. Jake's voice was flat. He's bitter, posting on military forums about how he was railroaded, how you attacked him, how the investigation was rigged. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Is he a threat? No, just pathetic. Nobody believes him. The video evidence is too clear, but he's out there spreading poison. Thought you should know. Thanks for the warning. There's more. His father tried to sue you. Civilian court. Claimed assault and battery. Judge threw it out in preliminary hearing. Video evidence again. Plus the military investigation clearing you. But it made local news. Your name's getting known outside the base. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. Great, exactly what I needed. Could be worse. Most of the coverage is positive. Female medic defends herself against assault. David and Goliath story. People eat that up. Jake shrugged. Just be prepared. Fame's a strange thing, even when you don't want it. The 6th and final week brought the practical examination. Each student faced multiple scenarios, treating casualties under simulated attack, defending themselves while performing medical procedures, working under stress in chaos, and the kind of pressure that reveals what you've really learned. Amy Chen faced her test on Wednesday. Simulated IED blast. 2 casualties, 3 attackers. She had to triage, treat, and defend simultaneously. She hesitated once, just once, when the first attacker grabbed her, but the training kicked in. Automatic response. She executed the escape, continued working, handled the second attacker, completed the treatment, evacuated both casualties successfully. When the scenario ended and the evaluators called clear, Amy stood there shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization that she'd done it, that she'd proven to herself she could. Sarah walked over. How do you feel? Terrified, exhilarated, exhausted. Amy laughed shakily. Is this how you felt in Wardak? Every day, Sarah said quietly. Every single day. And you learn to live with it. Learn to function despite it. That's what makes you capable. Marcus Reeves passed his test on Thursday. 3 attackers, 1 casualty with arterial bleed. He handled it with the efficiency of a combat veteran, dispatching threats and saving the casualty without wasting emotion. Daniel Park passed on Friday. Jennifer Walsh passed with flying colors, her athleticism translating perfectly to combat movement. All 40 students passed, some barely, some with flying colors, but all of them walked out different than they'd walked in. More confident, more prepared, more dangerous to anyone who thought a medic was easy prey. The graduation ceremony was small. No speeches, no dignitaries, just Master Chief Reeves presenting certificates, Gunner shaking hands, Sarah watching from the side as her students became something new. Afterward, Reeves pulled her aside. "Good work, Mitchell. Command is impressed. We're expanding the program. 3 more classes scheduled, different bases. You'll be traveling, teaching instructors how to teach your curriculum." "I'm ready, sir." "I know you are. That's why we're promoting you." He handed her a small box. Inside the anchors of a chief petty officer. "Effective next month. Congratulations, Chief Mitchell." Sarah stared at the rank. Chief, the backbone of the Navy, the leaders who made everything work. She'd never expected it, never imagined it. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep doing what you're doing, keep training, keep proving, keep making them understand that capability matters more than politics." Reeves closed the box in her hand. "Your father would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. You've earned this." That evening, Sarah drove to Arlington National Cemetery, 3 hours north. She'd made the trip before, knew the path. Section 60, row 12. The white marble headstone with her father's name. Staff Sergeant Michael Mitchell, United States Marine Corps. Iraq, 2007. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, gone but never forgotten. She knelt beside the stone, set Gunner's old medic bag on the grass, placed her new chief's anchors next to it. "Hey, Dad," she said quietly. "Been a while. Sorry about that. Things got complicated." The cemetery was quiet. Late afternoon sun filtering through the trees. A mockingbird singing somewhere. The endless rows of white stones marking lives given in service. "I got promoted, made chief. Probably wouldn't have happened if I hadn't broken 2 guys in a fight. Strange how things work out." She touched the stone, still warm from the sun. "I've been thinking about what you told me in that last letter. Before Iraq, you said, 'Don't let them break me. Don't break myself trying to fit. Break their world if I have to.'" She paused, swallowed hard. "I think I did that. Broke their world. Or at least cracked it a little. Showed them something they didn't want to see. That women can do the job. That size doesn't matter. That the person you underestimate is the one who beats you." Her voice roughened. "I wish you were here to see it. To tell me I did good. To tell me what comes next." The wind moved through the trees, rustled the flags placed at various graves. The eternal watch over those who'd served. "But I know what comes next. Same as always. Keep working. Keep proving. Keep training the next group. Keep honoring what you taught me." She stood, picked up the chief's anchors. "I'm going to make you proud, Dad. Already started. But I'm not done yet. Not even close." She saluted, led it for a long moment, then walked back to her car, carrying Gunner's bag, wearing her father's lessons, ready for whatever came next. 6 months passed. Sarah taught 3 more classes, traveled to Fort Bragg, to Camp Pendleton, to Joint Base Lewis McChord. Everywhere she went, the story followed. The medic who broke 2 SEALs, the 7-second battle, the video that had been watched millions of times despite Navy attempts to keep it classified. She didn't watch the video, didn't read the comments, didn't engage with the fame or the criticism or the endless debate about what it meant. Just focused on the work, on the students, on building the program into something that would outlive her. But fame has a way of finding you, whether you want it or not. The call came on a Tuesday. Commander Harwood's office. Sarah reported at 1400 hours. Found Harwood behind his desk with a civilian. Late 30s, professional suit, confident bearing. Chief Mitchell, this is Jennifer Ross. She's a producer for CBS News. They want to do a story on the combat medic program. And you. Sarah's stomach sank. Sir, with respect, I'm not interested in media attention. I understand, neither am I. But this isn't optional. The Secretary of Defense wants positive coverage of military integration efforts. You're the example they're using. So you'll cooperate with Ms. Ross. Answer her questions. Let her film the training. Make the Navy look good. That's an order, sir? That's an order. The interview happened 2 weeks later. Sarah in her dress blues, ribbons displayed, Bronze Star with Valor prominent, Jennifer Ross across from her with cameras and lights and questions designed to get emotional responses. Chief Mitchell, let's talk about that day, the demonstration. What were you feeling when Captain Stone and Lieutenant Grant attacked you? Sarah kept her voice level, professional. I was focused on survival, on responding to the threat, on defending myself appropriately. But you must have been scared. 2 men, both bigger, both trained killers. I've been scared before, in Afghanistan, under fire, when people were dying. This was just another situation requiring response. Fear is data. You process it and move forward. Some people say you went too far, that breaking their legs was excessive. Some people weren't there. The investigation reviewed all evidence and cleared me completely. I defended myself within bounds of military law and proper technique. Do you feel any remorse? Sarah paused, chose her words carefully. I regret the situation happened. I don't regret my response. If the same circumstances occurred tomorrow, I'd respond the same way. What do you say to young women who see you as a hero, who want to follow in your footsteps? Don't follow my footsteps. Make your own. Don't make me your hero. Make yourself capable. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. Prove it yourself. The piece aired 3 weeks later. 15 minutes on the evening news. Edited to focus on the drama, the conflict, the breakthrough moment. Sarah watched it once, hated seeing herself on screen. The way they'd framed it as inspiration porn instead of simply doing the job. But the response was overwhelming. Applications to the combat medic program tripled. Female enlistment jumped 12% in the following quarter. Letters arrived by the hundreds. From young women, from parents, from veterans who understood what she'd proven. Most of them Sarah didn't read, filed them away, focused on the work. But one letter she did read, because it came from Walter Reed Hospital, because the return address was Webb's, Sergeant Marcus Webb, the Marine she'd saved in Wardak, the reason this all started. The letter was short, handwritten, straight to the point. Chief Mitchell, I'm writing from Walter Reed, where I'm finishing rehab. They tell me I'll walk again, maybe even return to duty. All because you didn't quit on me when you should have, when everyone else would have. I watched the CBS piece, saw what happened, saw what you did, and I wanted to tell you something. You saved my life twice. Once in Wardak, when you kept me breathing. Once in that video when you showed every medic watching that they don't have to be victims, that they can fight back. That survival is possible. My little sister enlisted last month, Army medic. She watched that video 50 times, said you're the reason she believes she can do it. So I wanted to say thank you. For me, for her, for everyone who needed to see someone stand up and prove it could be done. You're my hero, Chief, whether you want to be or not. Semper Fi, Webb. Sarah folded the letter carefully, slipped it into the drawer next to Derek's apology. 2 sides of the same coin. One man she'd saved, one man she'd broken. Both changed by what she'd done. She pulled out Gunner's dog tags, held them up to the light. 50 years old, still solid, still carrying their weight. A knock at the door. Gunnar himself, as if summoned by thought. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Always." He sat heavily, his limp more pronounced these days, the years catching up despite his will to ignore them. "I'm retiring." Sarah's chest tightened. "When?" "End of the month, 28 years active. Another 26 teaching. Enough's enough." He smiled tiredly. "Body's telling me it's time. Can't keep up with the young ones anymore." "What will you do?" "Go home. Montana. Got a cabin there. Some land. Peace and quiet." He paused. "I wanted to tell you before it became official, and I wanted to give you something." He pulled out a file. Thick. Worn. His personal notes from 26 years of teaching. Techniques. Lessons learned. Student assessments. The accumulated wisdom of a career spent passing on what he'd learned the hard way. "This is yours now. Everything I know. Everything I've taught. It's your program now. Your legacy." Sarah took the file, felt its weight. "Gunnar, I can't replace you. Not asking you to. Asking you to continue what we started. To keep teaching, keep training, keep proving that skill beats size and discipline beats ego, and the person you underestimate is the one who changes everything." "I don't know if I can." "Yeah, you do. You proved it on that mat, proved it in Wardak, proved it every day since." Gunnar stood slowly. "Your dad taught you to stand. I taught you to fight. Now you teach others. That's how it works. That's how the mission continues." He moved to the door, stopped, looked back. "I've trained thousands of men, some good, some great, most just competent." His voice roughened. "But you're the only one who understood what I was really teaching. That violence is sometimes necessary, but restraint is always required. That capability without discipline is just cruelty. That the strongest person in the room is the one who knows when not to fight. You taught me that." "No, you already knew it. I just showed you how to apply it." He nodded once. "Final. Make me proud, Chief." "I will." He left. Sarah sat alone in her office holding his file and his dog tags, and understanding that another chapter had closed, that the mentor was stepping back, that the student had to become the teacher now. The ceremony for Gunnar's retirement was held on the same training compound where everything started. 200 people attended, SEALs he'd trained, officers he'd served under, students whose lives he'd changed. Master Chief Reeves presented him with the Legion of Merit, cited his decades of service, his impact on countless operators, his dedication to the mission above all else. When Gunnar spoke, he kept it brief. "I've spent 54 years in uniform, learned some things, taught some things, made mistakes and tried to fix them. If I had to sum it up, I'd say this: the mission matters. The people beside you matter. And if you're lucky, you get the chance to pass on what you've learned, so the next generation doesn't make your mistakes." He looked directly at Sarah. "I was lucky. I got that chance. And the person I passed it to did more with it than I ever imagined. So if you want to thank me for my service, don't. Thank her. She's the one doing the work now." After the ceremony, Sarah found him alone by the memorial wall. Same spot as before, reading the same names. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "The recognition, the spotlight." "Yeah, I did, because you'll deflect credit forever if someone doesn't force you to accept it." He touched one of the names on the wall. "These men died doing their job. You're living doing yours. That's worth recognizing. I'm just following what you taught me. No, you took what I taught and made it better. Made it yours. That's the difference between a good student and a great one." He pulled off his dog tags, the ones he'd worn through Vietnam and every day after. "One more thing." He held them out. Sarah stepped back. "I can't. Those are yours. Your history. They were mine. Now they're yours. You've earned them, worn them, honored them. They belong around your neck now, not in my drawer." "Gunnar." "Take them, Chief. That's an order from an old man who doesn't have many left to give." Sarah took them, felt their familiar weight, added them to the chain with her own tags. 2 sets now, her history and his, linked together. "What do I do now?" she asked quietly. "Same thing you've been doing. Teach, train, prove. Change minds one student at a time." Gunner's pale eyes found hers. "And when someone comes along who needs these more than you do, you pass them on. That's how legacy works. We carry the weight until we find someone stronger. Then we let them carry it forward. I'll make you proud." "Already have, Chief. Already have." 1 year after the 7-second battle, Sarah stood in front of her 8th graduating class. 50 students this time. The program had grown, expanded, become mandatory for all combat medics across all branches. The thing she'd started had become doctrine. Among the graduates was Amy Chen, no longer the scared 22-year-old who'd frozen during training, now a confident combat medic with deployment orders to Afghanistan. Following Sarah's path, writing her own story. After the ceremony, Amy approached. "Chief Mitchell, I wanted to thank you for everything, for showing me I could do this. You showed yourself. I just provided the tools. Still, you changed my life, made me believe I was capable." Sarah put her hand on Amy's shoulder. "Then do the same for someone else. Find the scared young medic who doesn't think they're strong enough, and show them they are. That's how you thank me, by passing it forward." "I will, I promise." Sarah watched her students leave, watched them scatter to bases in deployments and futures she couldn't predict. Each one carrying a piece of what she'd taught, each one proof that the work mattered. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. She opened it. "Chief Mitchell, this is Derek Stone. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted you to know I'm 2 months sober. In therapy, working on becoming someone I can respect. It's hard, but necessary. Thank you for forcing me to see what I'd become. It probably saved my life, even if it cost me my career. Respect, Derek." Sarah read it twice, didn't respond, but she didn't delete it either. Just saved it. Another piece of the story, another consequence playing out in real time. Redemption wasn't about forgiveness. It was about change. And Derek was changing. Maybe that was enough. That evening, she returned to her small apartment off base, poured a glass of water, sat on her balcony watching the sun set over the Pacific. The ocean vast and eternal and indifferent to human drama. She thought about her father, about Gunner, about Webb and Derek and Tyler and Amy and all the lives that had touched hers and been changed by that one moment. 7 seconds that had rippled outward into consequences she'd never imagined. She pulled out her phone, opened her photos, found the one picture she'd taken at her father's grave. His headstone, Gunner's medic bag, her chief's anchors. 3 generations of service. 3 people who'd believed that doing the job mattered more than recognition. That standing up when others backed down was worth the cost. That legacy wasn't about fame or rank or medals. It was about changing the people who came after you. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Commander Harwood, short message. "New assignment waiting on your desk tomorrow. You're going to want to see this one." She smiled, put the phone away, finished her water, and went inside to prepare for whatever came next. Because the mission wasn't done, would never be done. There would always be another student to train, another mind to change, another person who needed to see that size doesn't determine capability, that strength isn't always measured in pounds, that the quiet ones, the underestimated ones, the ones dismissed before they get a chance, those are the ones who change the world. Sarah Mitchell had started that change on a training mat in front of 282 witnesses. 7 seconds that became a lesson that became a program that became doctrine. But more than that, it became proof. Proof that standing up matters, that skill beats ego, that discipline beats strength, that one person refusing to back down can shift the trajectory of everyone watching. She'd broken 2 men to prove it, not because she wanted to, because they gave her no choice. And from that breaking came building, new programs, new confidence, new possibilities. Her father had taught her to stand. Gunnar had taught her to fight. Webb had taught her that saving lives mattered more than fear. Derek had taught her that even enemies can learn. Amy had taught her that passing it forward was the real victory. And now Sarah taught others, carried Gunnar's dog tags, honored her father's memory, built a legacy one student at a time. The 7-second battle was over. The war for change continued, and Chief Petty Officer Sarah Mitchell stood ready for whatever came next. Because that's what you do when you wear the uniform, when you carry the weight, when you understand that the mission is bigger than any individual moment. You stand, you fight, you teach, you prove, and you never, ever back down. The sun disappeared below the horizon. The ocean turned dark. The base lights flickered on across the compound. Another day ending, another beginning tomorrow. Sarah stood, went inside, set her alarm for 0500 because the work continued. The mission remained. And there were still people who needed to learn that they were stronger than they knew. She'd teach them, one at a time, for as long as it took. That was the real legacy, not the 7 seconds, but the lifetime of seconds that followed. Each one an opportunity to prove, to change, to build something better than what came before. And as Sarah drifted off to sleep, wearing 2 sets of dog tags and carrying the weight of everyone who believed in her, she understood finally what her father had meant in that last letter. Don't let them break you. Break their world instead. She had, and would continue to. Until the world understood that capability doesn't have a size, courage doesn't have a gender, and the person you underestimate today might be the one who changes everything tomorrow. That was the lesson. That was the truth. That was the legacy written in 7 seconds and carried forward forever.